I'm here this afternoon with Alice Linahan in Argyle, Texas. I have to be honest, I've never heard of Argyle, Texas, but I am delighted to find it because I was able to find you. I can't tell you how many people have said you've got to go meet and interview Alice Linahan. She does an awesome work. I would like for you to introduce yourself and your organization, Women on the Wall, to my audience so that they can understand what an awesome project and work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. It's excited that you're here with me in Argyle, Texas. And Women on the Wall is an organization that was founded by a dear friend of mine, Rebecca Forrest, back in 2008. And it was on her heart to start this organization to really educate moms and dads to what their children were being exposed to online.
Okay.
And her passion, that was her passion, and also she had a real interest in the immigration issue. And we met, and she brought me on board. I'm the vice president of Women on the Wall. And we really focus now on three key issues: education, immigration, and national security, and how they're all interconnected. And over the last 3 years with Women on the Wall, we've had this Wednesday night conference call where we've had experts from across the country who've called in and have really taken the time to educate us on the issue of education primarily. And we started a campaign calling on moms and dads and grandparents to go into their children's schools, all school, public school, private school, charter school, even look at homeschool curriculum.
Yes.
And ask 3 questions. Can I see what you're teaching my child? Can I see how you're teaching my child? What's the professional development of the teacher? How are they being trained to teach? And then number 3, can I see who's financially benefiting from the curriculum products that my child's teacher is being evaluated on? And what we have found in that campaign is, as parents and myself being one of them, when you go in and say, can I see, it's really a weak position. Can I see what you're teaching my child?
Mm-hmm.
And we have taken this journey with families from can I see to I can see. I can see what you're teaching, I can see how you're teaching, and I can see who's financially benefiting, and it's not my child, and actually it's dangerous for my child.
Wow.
And so I have to stand. And we've really we've just been blessed to meet families, you know, in the media or from education people. You hear, oh, parents just don't care, they're just not involved anymore. Well, that's not what I've found. And I've also found that there are a lot of really wonderful veteran teachers that know how to teach children how to read well, how to write well, how to do math, taught history, and they're being weeded out of the system. And this campaign has given us the opportunity to not only empower parents, but to build a bridge between us and those teachers who, many of them, can't speak out because they'll lose their job. And so we're their voice.
Yeah.
And so it's been such a blessing. And then I have my own personal blog. It's called Voices Empower, EMPOWER.com, and we've been able to write a lot of stories, put out a lot of information, and I kind of see myself as an information pusher.
Very good.
There's a lot of great journalists. There's a lot of great content that is created. But generally on the right side, we don't tell the stories. We cover stories, but we don't tell the stories of the people. And the left does a brilliant job of yes, telling the story. And so we've been, I have labeled I'm a conservative information pusher.
Very good.
And push it out in through the grassroots.
CIP.
Yes, it's CIP. That's it. And so it's been fun because then I've been able to work with everyday moms and dads who are becoming what I call the you've got the connected authority. Someone online, like my Facebook, people that I went to high school with, 3 years ago thought I was crazy. And they'd say, "What are you doing? You need to get a life,"
Oh, yeah.
And I'd say, here's the deal. While you're going and get your nails done and, doing those things, there's a lot of things going on that you don't know is impacting you personally and especially your children.
Yes.
And now those people come to my Facebook wall for their news and information.
Right.
And so as a connected authority, I go out and talk to the engaged minority. Those people that go to grassroots meetings, people that go to belong to organizations and invite people like myself in, and they are the engaged minority. And my personal goal is to empower the engaged minority to become the connected authority in their local community.
Right.
They can cover the news. They can do great things. And that's how we reach the passive majority, the people who are watching Dancing with the Stars. And I see it happening. People that, I've given class to or spoken to in the past, and they say, "Oh, you wouldn't believe, I've got my Facebook up, I'm doing videos, Dave," and they become the local expert. And I don't think we're going to elect someone to save us. We're going to have to save ourselves. And the way to save ourselves is to get educated on the facts. And one of the best ways to get educated on the facts is to look at what the reality is on the ground for our children and their future. And that's really where Women on the Wall, and through Rebecca, we've been able to really take that to a different level. So it's exciting. It's really exciting.
Back in the day, you trusted those in authority to do the right thing. We called it public trust. That isn't anymore. No. We have to, as you're saying, we've got to take that back. We've got to educate ourselves and quit assuming that all is well, because it really isn't. No. It really, it's frightening how much it really isn't. And we've been, so many of us, just oblivious way too long. Right. We got a lot of work to do to bring it back. Give the audience an idea of some of just the basic kind of things, especially through the education field, that you've discovered that is happening in the classrooms.
Really, it's a shift. It's a transformation in education away from academics, reading, writing, math, and history, to attitudes, values, beliefs, behaviors, and changing the next generation's worldview. And there are different agendas, different people that want access to our children, because when you shift away from academics to attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors, it becomes whose attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors.
So who might someone, for instance, be in that case?
Well, you have the Linda Darling Hammonds of the world.
Who is that for?
Linda Darling Hammond she was one of Obama's key education policy advisors. She happens to be good friends with Bill Ayers. And it's interesting because when you look at right now in the news, you hear about Common Core, Common Core national standards. Common Core is not about a set of national standards. It's about a philosophy of education. And it's interesting because when you look at the strategies and tactics that were used to put Common Core into 45 states across the country, what they did is they said it was state-led by the Governors Association. And what we find out is that the copyright is owned by the NGA, the National Governors Association, and the Council of Chief State School Officers. These are trade organizations out of Washington, D.C.
Interesting.
And Linda Darling Hammond, along with another guy, David Coleman, were instrumental in using that business model, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Texas, a state that said no to Common Core, we're tough, we're right wing, we say no to Common Core. Actually, we didn't need to say yes because we were already implementing the philosophy of education
Oh, really?
before the rest of the country. And you may have heard of C-Scope in Texas. Well, it's really interesting because the marketing of C-Scope was district-led. And the districts needed, your small and rural districts needed this curriculum management system for their teachers, and it was district-led. Well, come to find out, it's the same business model as the Common Core National Standards. In Texas, we have 20 education service centers that service our small and rural districts and
Right.
many of our private schools too. And the 20 directors formed a nonprofit organization, and they own the copyright to C-Scope.
Interesting.
Interesting. And so then you look at that business model, and David Coleman, who was instrumental with Linda Darling Hammond, after they put Common Core into 45 states, he became the president of the College Board. Well, the College Board owns the copyright to the SAT and all the AP, Advanced Placement Curriculum, Framework, and Assessment. So it's the same business model. And what's interesting is in Texas, C-Scope was put into 875 small and rural school districts.
Mm-hmm.
Then our legislators, overwhelmingly on both the right and the left, passed Senate Bill 1557. And what that did is it set up this high-performance consortium of large school districts, Louisville ISD, Klein ISD, Highland Park ISD. And they were able to go around the Texas standards to use these to create new innovative standards. So through Women on the Wall, we have these Wednesday night conference calls, and we're talking about the philosophy of education and who's behind the learning theories and the curriculum design. And so we had a gentleman on one of those calls, and he was a school board member in Louisville ISD. So he did a agenda item to ask, because Louisville has their own curriculum department. They don't depend on the Education Service Center.
Okay.
So he did a request, and he said, I just want to know how we spent that $18+ million and what is the curriculum that we have. And basically she said we were Common Core before Common Core was cool. And they were using the learning theories of Lev Vygotsky, the curriculum design of Robert Marzano, Grant Wiggins, and Jay McTighe. Now that's interesting because
For those that don't know those names.
Lev Vygotsky, Lev Vygotsky, the learning theory of Lev Vygotsky, he's a behavioral psychologist from the Soviet Union.
Oh, good. Okay.
Robert Marzano and Jay McTighe and Grant Wiggins happens to be real good friends with Bill Ayers and Linda Darling Hammond as well. So these people are creating curriculum design based on the learning theories of Lev Vygotsky. And what's interesting is I had a PowerPoint slide from Ector ISD. And
That's Odessa, isn't it?
Odessa area, yeah. And it said professional development, Linda Darling Hammond, learning theories, Lev Vygotsky, curriculum design, Robert Marzano, and J McTighe. So when you understand that whether they call it Common Core, whether they call it, a high performance consortium or the future learner or 21st century learning or C-scope, it's all the same thing.
And reality is, the children that are going through that can't read proficiently, do not understand math. They no longer know how to write in cursive,
Right.
and a variety of things.
Right.
And the American student, or Texan even, is getting further and further away from what their father and grandfathers were able to do in school.
It is, and there's a political purpose behind those learning theories. The political purpose is to create submission. And it's interesting, I had a meeting at Region 11 here in Fort Worth, and I was talking to the curriculum developer, and a really great lady, very nice lady, and I said, look, I have this PowerPoint slide that says Linda Darling Hammond. Did Linda Darling Hammond write C-scope? And she said, no, you don't understand. It was written for Texas teachers by Texas teachers, but they use Linda Darling Hammond's philosophy of education. And I said, really, that's interesting, because I've read books by Linda Darling Hammond, I've watched videos, and she's a humanist who believes in equalizing America and the world through education. Is that what you're telling me you're doing?
Wow.
And this woman didn't know. She just didn't know.
Right.
She didn't know. And
Yeah.
And it's interesting because as we're going out and we're asking, can I see what you're teaching my child? Can I see how you're teaching my child? So many of these people in education don't know the history. And it's interesting because this is really the third radical push in the United States in modern time. You had it in the late 60s, early 70s. Then you had it in the late 80s, early 90s, and then we're having it again. But it's been just long enough that those new people in education, or fairly new people in education, they don't know the history about the battles with Phyllis Schlafly and so many people, Peg Luxick out of Pennsylvania, who were fighting against outcome-based education. That's what this is. It's outcome-based education, rebranded as the 21st century learning. And so that's where I think we have an opportunity. And what's really interesting about this is when a child is not taught to read well and to write well and to do math, they don't have an equal opportunity of success.
Yeah.
They have equal outcomes, but not an equal opportunity. And there are a lot of liberal moms and dads that want their children to know that 2 + 2 is 4.
Yes.
That there's absolutes.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people in positions of power that would like to play kind of identity politics and pit us one against the other.
Yes, absolutely.
And when we are in our own local community and we're talking with our neighbors and we're talking about this issue of our children being dumbed down, and we can talk about it in terms of what is the reality for our children, that's when we have an opportunity to build bridges.
Yes.
We also have an opportunity to, witness to people, and to where I am on my journey today is completely different than where I was 10 years ago. And I really think that God is doing some incredible things in building this network.
Yes. Yes.
Of moms and dads. And Dr. Peg Luxick, she's out of Pennsylvania. She's incredible. I love this woman, and she's been fighting this for years and years. And someone asked her, why is it all these women who are out fighting against this? And she said, a man will die for his child. He will stand in the line of fire and die for his child. A mother will kill. And
There is a difference there.
There is a difference there. And that is a God-given instinct. And when you can get to that God-given instinct in a mother, and fathers too, because there's some incredible dads that are out fighting this battle with us. But when you can get to that instinct to protect,
Yeah.
no amount of money, no agenda, nothing can stop you from protecting your child. And that's what's happening. It's so exciting to see that. I was just at a meeting last night in Dallas, and there were moms and dads from Dallas ISD, Highland Park ISD, Richardson ISD, Southlake ISD, and Argyle ISD. And we were standing together. And
Yes.
it's exciting. It's really exciting. So in the turmoil and the bad news that's all out there, especially in education, there's really good stories to be told.
Now you mentioned that there were 3 areas, education being one of them that y'all focus on. What were the other 2?
Immigration
Okay.
and national security.
All right. What in immigration are you working on?
Well, and that's Rebecca's
Okay.
forte, and she's wonderful at it. But you know, it's really interesting. I testified back. There was a big brouhaha in 2014 when the new AP U.S. History framework was released, and as I said, the AP is owned by the College Board, and David Coleman has aligned all of the AP curriculum to this Common Core philosophy of education. So I testified, and one of the things that I testified, that I said, was when you look at David Coleman, but more importantly, when you look at his mother, who's been a college professor, college president for many years, she really believes that in a revolution through education and changing our form of government from a constitutional republic to a democracy. And when you see what's happening, this is a revolution. And one of the things that our forefathers warned us about in a democracy is mob rule.
Mm.
And one of the things that we see happening with the immigration issue is this influx of refugees.
Yeah.
Influx. And our elected officials are holding a carrot. Things like in-state tuition for illegals, or
medical care, education,
everything.
housing, Social Security benefits.
Everything. And it is so dangerous because think about it. If I'm a mom and I live in Mexico or Central America and there's danger all around, and I hear that there's life for my child on the other side,
Yeah.
I would do anything to get my child there. It's that same instinct
Right.
that I was talking about. But how immoral is it to hold the carrot, and then on that journey over, we are subjecting these children to torture, to rape, to murder. And when you look at it in those terms, how inhumane this is. If we would secure our borders, if we would protect those children and hold their home country accountable
Yes.
for not providing a safe homeland, we would be in a totally different situation. So when you look at this philosophy of education, there are people with agendas that will use it to their advantage. It's the same thing with national security. When you think of the political purpose behind these learning theories is to create submission, and that you look at the agenda of civilization jihad,
Yes.
it is all about creating submission.
Mm-hmm.
And there are clear ties to people directly tied to the Muslim Brotherhood that are using this shift away from academics to create civilization jihad. And that's a very dangerous place.
And most people don't understand what civilization jihad is, because even 24 months ago, that was a term they had never heard.
Right.
And we're just hearing it, and would you like to define it for the audience?
Well, it is, you have it's not even, you have a violent jihad, 9/11, what happened in Boston.
Yes.
You have violent jihad. Civilization jihad is really a pre-violent jihad.
Infiltrating.
Coming into the school system, coming into, it's interesting, there's a video of Bill Ayers, and he says, don't try to reach the seats of power that you don't have access to. Reach the seats of power that you have direct access to: city council, mayor, school boards. Someone like him, who is clearly anti-American, and wants to equalize America in the world, is using that same philosophy. Those that would like to impose Sharia on our society are coming in: city councils, mayors, school boards, textbooks, all of that. And so it is a slow creeping, pre-violent
Getting
jihad.
people into place, the Trojan
Yes.
horse theory of just getting yourself positioned for that moment.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And we see it happening in lots of ways, and our government is definitely infiltrated
Yes,
all the way to the top.
they are.
Yeah.
They are.
And then even in our local governments, we find Agenda 21 from the United Nations coming in there. The topics are endless.
They are.
And
But
issues that we
they're
have
all
at hand.
interwoven.
Yes, they
I mean,
are.
the education is part of, when you look at the United Nations, and you look at the ESSA that just passed, which was the reauthorization of the 1965 bill, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. It was reauthorized several times. It was reauthorized in 2001 under No Child Left Behind. They just reauthorized it again in December, and it's called the Every Student Succeeds Act, which just the name tells you it's not good.
Yeah, yeah,
Because that's equal outcomes, not equal opportunity.
yeah.
But it is so dangerous because of what is written in that legislation. And when you look at the ties of funding coming into the United States from, like, the Qatar Foundation, we're in a very dangerous place, and people do not realize.
They're
that.
oblivious.
They're oblivious. But, and like, I'll give you a perfect example. In Houston ISD, Texas said no to Common Core. We passed a law against it. But Texas is the only traditional public school district that took Race to the Top money, federal funds, $30 million, which clearly aligns them to the Common Core philosophy of education. Now they are, with the help of grants from the Qatar Foundation, they are starting Arabic immersion magnet schools. And it is interesting when you listen to the testimony at the school board meeting. There was a guy from the Arab American community that testified, and he said the reason why they needed this Arabic immersion school was because of the refugees that were coming into the community. So it's all there. It's just important that we expose it and empower local people to say no.
And people don't understand the difference of the mindset today versus 50 years ago when somebody came to this country. They came to become an American.
Right.
They came to learn our language. They came to embrace our culture.
Yes.
Not to, put down their culture or to abandon, but to
No.
embrace and to become an American with a heritage from their past country. But now it's us adapting to who's coming,
Right.
and so therefore America loses its identity.
Yes. And that's really when I say changing a child's worldview. You go into any school district in Texas, many many private schools too, and you'll hear it's all about creating a global student.
Yeah.
And it's basically, you're no longer that kid from Argyle, Texas, who was in the band or on the football team. They're taking our identity away, and you're no longer that Texan that happens to live in a global economy. You're a global citizen that just happens to live in America. Place.
Yeah, it really is. When we spoke on the phone before we met, you mentioned that there was an event coming up in
Yes.
Houston, I believe.
I do, and I have it. It's about the child. And it is January 29th through the 31st. It's going to be a wonderful event. If people are in Houston, I encourage you to go to it'saboutthechild.com and you can register. There's a few spots open. They're going to have incredible speakers. Peg Laxick, who I talked about, will be there. Dr. Duke Pesta, Joan Lands. They're just incredible speakers. And the other thing is if you can't get to Houston, you can go online and register and watch it virtually. I think it's $10, so you can watch the whole event online, and you can watch it up to, I think, February 14th. But this group that's putting it together, it really is focused on, this is about our children.
Yes.
And this is the reality that they're living in right now, and their future is being harmed, and so we need to step in the gap and take care of them.
It's being stolen.
It's being
taken
stolen.
away.
Exactly.
Taken away. If people want more information on Women on the Wall, where do they need to go?
They can go to womenonthewall.org,
Okay.
and I encourage you to register on there to get our, I only do one email a week. I don't send out a bunch of email, but you get the call-in number, and
Okay.
everyone's welcome to join us on our Wednesday night conference calls.
Great.
All the archives are there too on womenonthewall.org, so you can listen to past shows, and then also go to Voices Empower, EMPOWER.com, and I've got some great articles there.
That was your blog.
That's my blog.
Okay. All right. Gosh, there's a lot that all of us need to learn in this area of your expertise and Women on the Wall and those all three of those areas. But hopefully we got the audience a little taste, a little appetizer, so that they'll seek out more information and get involved and help your organization from all the various points that they live. So, Alice, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it, and
Thank you.
look forward to visiting with you in the future as well.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks.